Hey guys, welcome to World Talks. My name is David Mac Jones. I'm so excited you're here. Today's going to be a great day. I'm excited to have a really good friend of mine, Dexter Sullivan. Dexter, how are you doing today, man?
Doing great, bro.
How's it going?
Going well, man. Thank you for having
Yeah?
me on.
I'm glad you're here. For those of you who don't know, me and Dexter go way back. We went to college together. Actually, Dexter, you're the one who helped me move in to my college dorm, which was crazy. And
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah, with my dad,
I
which was
remember you and Bookie's parents.
yes, the African parents with the thick accent, you know.
Oh, yeah,
So
they came decked out too, like they were ready.
yeah, yeah. But one thing I love about you, bro, is like you've been someone who's so passionate about serving others. You're the basically the example in my life that I know of a servant leader. You know, in every place that you've been, you've created things, created like platforms to serve people, to love on people. And you've done that in the church space, you've done that in the social space, in every way that you could do that. So I really wanted to talk to you today about like how we can be people of faith and fight injustice, because I feel like there's a struggle between that, with like black people in the church space of trying to navigate that without stepping on people's toes, and also just learn from some of your experiences. So but before we get into that, I just want people to learn a little bit more about you and kind of like what you do.
Well, that was a phenomenal introduction, and if I might say, a bit generous, but I really appreciate it. Yeah, a little about me. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I
Okay.
relocated to Tulsa, Oklahoma for college. That's where we met,
Hmm.
and had some amazing experiences and opportunities when I lived in Oklahoma. My career kind of started there as an entrepreneur. I started a couple of businesses when I lived there, and later moved to Dallas, Texas. And I served in sales and marketing, and I traveled full time in outside sales for a large software company. That was an amazing experience. And
Hmm.
then I moved into higher education, served as a director of admissions for a university in the Texas area for some years. And then I more recently relocated back to Detroit. And I'm excited about being back. There's nothing like being in the place that you grew up. And
Yeah.
so 15 years later, that journey has blown me back home, and I'm loving being back. And so I run Dexter Sullivan Enterprises, which is a business collective for other companies, which are really expressions of my heart. I really believe that your life should be lived out of your overflow, the things that just come out of who you are.
Mm.
And I like to be more of a beer than a doer. And so that's kind of the nature of how I do what I do. But essentially, what I do is I help people to thrive and live well and create solutions that really push them into the future that I believe is the best that all of us should be obtaining, the best future that is for us.
Yeah. And just for me, one of those examples of you creating things like that is in college where you created this platform called Man to Man, which was a program where it was like a mentorship program where we mentor young black kids in the inner city and different places from like different communities. And that was such a rewarding experience for me and so many other guys who were involved. And I've just seen you do like different things like that. No matter what you were doing, you're always creating something for like the people, like always people who didn't have access to those things. And I just really want to touch your mind about that too as well. But also in the midst of all that, you were also involved in church. Like you were also whether working with a church or pastor or minister. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about some of your experiences about that. Like, why do you think the church sometimes is so silent on racism? You know, because that's something I've noticed even before most of the events that happened this year. Like sometimes you just hear like church radio silent. You go to on Sunday sometimes and it's like, someone dies or there's a big murder and no one talks about it. Why do you think the church has been silent all these years up till now about racism?
I think it just, I think if we look broadly and then get more specific, we'll find the answer. And I
Mm,
think a lot of times that our answers are closer and simpler than we make them. Um, I would say that a good majority of the church has not been silent and has spoken out. And it depends on which part of the church you're talking about.
Mm.
That all deals with orientation. So how have you oriented yourself to religion, to faith, to Christianity, and what your religion is? And so uh, there's a strong social justice movement uh, in the kingdom of God, but a lot of times the individuals that are in that movement don't interact with people that are not as progressive and in that space. And
Mm.
so in a more traditional, predominantly white driven, there are black churches that are culturally driven by uh, white culture centers. And so just because you have black people in the space doesn't mean that they are progressive and that they would be associated with a Reverend Barber from the Poor People's Campaign, who was a direct inheritor of some of Martin Luther King's final work. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
the majority of the church today, if Dr. King was still alive and in his prime, they would not associate with him. And
Wow.
that is when Dr. King did what he did. I am somewhat annoyed when I hear people quoting Dr. King and they
Mm.
don't abide by any kind of an ideology that
Yeah.
reflects his theology, because his theology was very progressive and a lot of people did not really celebrate him until he died. So
Mm.
yeah, I think it just depends on how we're oriented to that entire conversation. And I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to tolerance. We don't realize that a lot of the things that we do are born out of intolerant environments. And so that silence that you're talking about, that
Yeah.
deafening silence, it actually is coming from a nicety version of an intolerant perspective.
Wow. I think you just said something that's so powerful about like every MLK day, every pastor in America posts something, right? But behind the scenes, after that day, when we have, all these cases that are coming up and all the situations, like the silence is deafening. So, but some people are just like, I don't know what to say. I've heard that, because, I don't know what to say. I don't want to be insensitive. I don't know like how to take that next step. What would you say to churches or even pastors who are in that situation right now, who I'm trying to figure out how I can fight injustice, even though I don't know what to do? What are some steps that they can take instead of just being quiet about those matters, but really focusing on being anti-racist?
Before I just answer that, I want to give a little background. So I understand fully what you're talking about, and
Hmm.
evolved in my journey of how I deal with these types of things over the years. And I have friends that are staunch conservatives, you know, without them telling me, I know they're voting for Trump, and that's the space that they live in. You know, they're
Mm.
extremely patriotic, and it's intertwined, and they don't have a way to separate those things. And so I really understand that side of things. I'm not on that side of things.
Yeah.
Not. And so when people use the excuse that they don't know what to do, I've had dozens of people calling me over the last few months saying, what do I do? What do I say? This is the thing. You do what matters to you.
Mm.
Spend our money and our time the way that we choose to do that.
Yeah.
Whether we're doing that aimlessly is neither here nor there. The fact that it's being done is that it's being done. And so if it's not important enough to you to do your own research, to read your own books, to listen to your own narratives, that would inform you on
Mm.
how to think about these things, I can't really help you. And so when people will call me and say, what do I do? I say, I don't know what you should do, because at the end of
Wow.
the day, your actions are predicated on what you believe and what your convictions are. I can't give you convictions. I can't give
Mm.
you a belief system. I
That's
can't
good.
to frame something that is your work. You can listen to me and we can have a dialogue, but if you don't put anything into it, it's like a relationship. That's like somebody coming up to me and saying, um, we're in a relationship, me and another young lady, and we're trying to figure it out. And, she doesn't take the time to learn me and I don't take the time to learn her. We just come to each other and say, what do you want me to do? But
Mm.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you're in the situation, but the person usually would feel like you don't care enough about me to pay attention.
Exactly. Yep.
about me to learn me. And if I have to tell you everything I want, what is that? Like, what kind of relationship is that? And so that's what we have a lot of times, not even just black and white. A lot of times there are black people who have never experienced racism. They've been living in a vacuum or in a bubble, and they don't really resonate with it. A lot of my black brothers and sisters from Africa, they don't understand the African experience like I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of learning that needs to take place. And I think at first we need responsibility for our own learning, for our own selves. What are we going to make a decision to do? Because if you keep seeing the facts and you look at the metrics, there's a problem here.
Yeah.
And we need to do something about it. So then it's up to us. Just the same as with sex trafficking, child slavery, the slavery that's happening in Libya, domestic violence, gun violence. All of these are issues that until a lot of times you're affected by them, I'll say for gun violence, it wasn't until I had somebody knocking on my door trying to shoot me that I recognized that gun violence was an issue. And then I became an advocate.
Wow.
It wasn't until I started experiencing racism that actually activating myself as an activist became important to me. I always had respect for the history because of my family and the stories and my grandparents. But until I started to experience it, that's when it tapped into me being activated to respond.
Yeah. That's powerful, bro. And just to go back to your point of you saying like there needs to be a personal responsibility. And for me, what I struggle with, with some of the thought process of people who are asking those questions is like, you claim to be serving everyone, right? Serving people, especially as a pastor, as a leader, you're serving everybody. But where is that personal responsibility to like learn the things that you're saying, to read in the books, or to even have those conversations, like going out your own way instead of like just putting out a statement or just quoting, MLK Day. And I think what you say is very important is just like when you have those experiences of racism, like that's when like, wow. Or when you even see somebody having that experience and you're in that midst, like in that interaction, I feel like people can do better to like stepping in and saying like, I encountered something that was not right, that was injustice. What is my next step? And I think people stop at asking, what is that next step? They just, oh, this is bad, or I don't know why this keeps happening, but something must be done about it. So I'm glad that you touched on like there needs to be a sense of that personal responsibility, because if we don't take that shape, then my big question with that is like, so what personal convictions is God putting in our heart? And I don't know about you, bro. Throughout everything that's happened this year, there's a certain story in the Bible that has been tugging on my heart. And this is the story of the Good Samaritan, of just about like how there was a man who was hurt and who was on the ground, and like the religious leader passed him by, and like so many people passed him by. It took a Samaritan that who didn't even know, who wasn't even welcome, an outsider, to come love on him. And I think like sometimes that the church needs to think like the outsider and say, I don't know what happened, but I see this people on the ground. I see this group of people who are struggling during this time and they're always suffering. How can I get to the ground and just give them help without thinking, why was he on the ground? Why is he hurt? Like what happened to him? And so for me, that is the dilemma sometimes that I have, with just like thinking about like the church and how we maneuver through these areas. And which leads to my next question, like, what are some of your experiences? And you don't have to like say everything, but just even like some of your experiences of like even seeing racism being handled in the church, and how people deal with that. Because I feel like I don't want to go into the schematics of what happened. I don't know if you heard about this, but it was like a famous rapper Lecrae. He was, with the Leaders of Passion, and they said something, and it was hard for him to maneuver how to, correct, the pastor who said something, he was saying like white, he was saying like slavery was like white blessing or something like that. But I was just going to think, like, how do we as Black Christians, you know, deal with like racism in the church? Like, what are some things that you experienced that you would suggest, or even like just advice or anything like that to contribute to that conversation?
That's a big question.
I know it's a lot. It's a lot because sometimes I feel like we can sweep stuff under the rug. You know what I'm saying? Like you hear a comment, you're just like, should I? I don't want to be that person that ruffles the feathers, but should I say something or should I say something? But like, where, like, what is the, I guess, the place where we can hold people accountable, right? So that they can know, like, okay, this is a boundary you're not going to cross. Instead of just saying, like, no one was serving God together, so they're a believer, they're Christian, you know, everything goes, it's okay.
Right. That's a very good question.
Yeah.
So I'd say two things. I'm going to float these and we'll just respond to them. But
Okay.
lead by example. And I actually forgot the other one, but it was. I would say this too. When people show you what they think and what they believe, believe them.
Wow.
I don't waste my time dealing with people that prove to me that they're racist. You know, I do have empathy for my white brothers and sisters because a lot of them are ignorant of their own devices. So they don't even realize their intolerance and their racism and their bigotry because it is their experience. So a lot of times they don't have empathy until they see someone being knelt on for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And then they think, well, shoot, that is horrible.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. But the gravity of that situation is, why did it take that for you to realize that there's a problem? That is a problem.
Yeah.
When you hear things like, the statement about the white blessing, and then I saw the other guy talking about we just need to go up and shine each other's shoes. You know, to me, that's absolutely ludicrous. But I know many white people that would have, said something similar, really stupid, just off the cuff stuff, because they've never actually thought through this. It's not become an area of conviction where, similar to how they are convicted about the American flag and they're convicted about, abortion, and they're convicted about all of the conservative tokenism, I call it. What is my experience is not revealed to you in conviction, and so you don't have an appropriate response for it. It's just the facts. I think that we should lead by example, and I think that I'm not for intolerance, and I'm not for reverse racism, where you become racist against those that were racist against you. That's not biblical. We understand an eye for an eye, railing for railing. That's not how we should respond. Turn the other cheek. But there does come a place where you use common sense. And if you're trying to get something done, how can two walk together unless they be agreed?
Yeah.
And so I'm not walking with people that are not agreed, because I believe that my stance in social justice for the people that look like me is biblical. So the wrestle there is what they feel about what I'm doing. It makes them uncomfortable. So a lot of times they'll say it's not biblical. But just because you're uncomfortable with something doesn't make it untrue. There's a lot of things in the scripture that make me uncomfortable. But just because of the uncomfortability doesn't mean I can just throw it to the side.
Whatever. Yeah.
And so I think confrontation is healthy. And if somebody can't be confronted, if somebody can't be corrected, they show you a lot about their position, their level of maturity. And I think that that's what is really being revealed right now. It's just a lot of ignorance and a lot of immaturity, just held by individuals, because it is not fully a color problem. It's a heart problem, and it's a mind problem. It's the way that we think. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal. They're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. There are imaginations, things that people have thought up, things that people perceive about the way the world works, and they just made that the reality when in fact it is not. I was watching a documentary about Donald Trump the other day, and they were showing his alignment with all of these conspiracy theorist groups who are like doing crazy things. And I mean, he retweets them all the time and is like obsessed with conspiracy theories. And the problem with the conspiracy theory is the more that you rehearse it, the more that you feel that it's true. And so we're in a very dangerous area where it comes to truth and where it comes to reality, because the majority of people that we're talking about that we feel like need to change right now, they don't even believe the things that are true.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of nuanced dynamics to the era that we're in right now. And the Lord said that the last days would be unpredictable and they would be chaotic. And that's exactly what we're experiencing. It's man coming to the end of himself. And he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. And with just everything that you just said, bro, with everything going on, I guess the silver lining, or for me, the positive perspective that I've gotten to see is so many people that want to bring change, right? So many people who want to create, whether that's a platform or they want to create a system or policy to bring change. But I think about it on a grassroots level, on like the simple level as people in their community, like how can we, as not just Black people, but everyone in general who's like, I want to do something, I want to take that next step, or people who have those visions or those ideas and goals, how can they be an activist in where they're at? How can they serve their community through activism right now?
Well, they've got to start. So everything has to have a beginning. I'd say write the vision, make it plain, figure it out in your heart, what it is that you want to do. Two things that are really important to me are organization, organizing people, organizing resources. So getting together those that are going to galvanize with you and begin to gather the resources that it's going to take to accomplish what it is you want to do together. And there are so many things that are important. For me right now, I'm focused on negotiations because I feel like that is the season that we're entering now. After there's an uprising, people have to come to the table and they have to begin to interact over information and make decisions over what the future is going to look like. And so that's where I'm throwing myself in. I mentioned earlier to you, I don't know if we talked about it on this call, but we started something called the Black Legacy Advancement Coalition, which is a policy think tank of individuals from diverse backgrounds that have something in common, which is they like to see policies advocated for that impact African-American lives. And so we've organized groups all over the country, and we're starting to move into policy planning and preparing documents that will actually inform lawmakers and public and private sector enterprises on how to deal with African-American values in those areas. And so for me, I am now committed to pushing the needle on providing value for those communities that is requisite. I think that the American culture is not prepared for the pain of that process. And we're not the most patient people. I don't want to be harsh when I say this. But, Blacks uniquely have a stronger tolerance for pain and discomfort rather. And so we're a little used to being uncomfortable, like the uprising that's going on. And when I talk to brothers and sisters of different racial persuasions, they're like, oh no, the world is ending. This is so horrible. What can we do? In my mind, I'm thinking, this has been happening all the time. I mean, we're burning down your buildings, which is not good. I don't like that part of it. But they've been kneeling on our necks and doing crazy things
since day one.
So there's a different gut reaction based on experience there.
Yeah.
But I think African Americans at this time are not as organized as they need to be to move the needle forward. We have a lot going on But because the pain has been displaced for a significant number of years, you don't have the same unity dynamic that you had in the 60s, where Blacks didn't have access to rights and things that they have now. And the devastation in our African American communities since the Civil Rights Act and since the Voters' Right Act of 64 and 65,
Mm-hmm.
we're not where we should be.
Yeah.
Up here.
Yeah.
As a people. And so that creates a whole nother challenge when you talk about organizing, because you don't have people in the mental headspace. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but we've got a hip hop artist that wants to run for president. And to me, that just shows the lack of mental stability, not only in an individual, but in a community that would affirm that in any way. You know, our respect for intellectual capital has to be restored so that we can sensible moves and sensible decisions. That's the problem with what's going on in America right now, is that we don't have leadership guiding the narrative and leading people into things that actually make sense. You know, we really need a restoration to the intellect of the moral fiber of this country.
Yeah. I wasn't going to talk about this, but based on what you just said, I just remember talking to a friend of mine. They asked me, and this person was a white person. They were like, why isn't there leaders like back in the 60s? Like, who is the MLK for today? Like, who is the Malcolm X? Like, who is, putting people together, creating that sense of organization? And I'm going to ask you this question. Do you feel like we need that person? Or are we in a place, in a different future, where it is actually more of a voice, more of a movement, more of that in that perspective than having individuals and that we can say, okay, this is our leader who's leading us in this? Or is it several leaders that are leading the movement for change?
I believe that we do need a person and we do need a movement. About leadership is that it always manifests in a personality. Donald Trump is a leader.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate the kind of leader that he is, but I have to respect the fact that he is a leader and he has galvanized a following. I believe that his leadership is very disparaging and very damaging to the fibers of the American reality, and that if not put in check and removed quickly, that it is going to really undo everything that we are. And so I see that as a moral threat to 400 million people. I mean, it's a significant factor, and not only to the American people, but to the impact that America has around the world. It will change the river if we continue to follow this. But in the African American community, our agenda is very unclear. The NAACP, at its height, represented the will of the African American people in a very significant way, and it partnered with organizations like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in a dynamic way, but do not have that galvanized direction coming from a voice of people. Now, this is my opinion. Some people think that what we have now is fine. I don't. I think that you have more renegade voices, which are great, important voices, but I don't know that they speak for national policy. Now you have wealthy individuals and rock star individuals, so people with a platform and people with cash, that those things are bringing them to the forefront. And if you look back at the civil rights movement, it wasn't either of those things. The people were not famous to start with. They did not have a lot of money. They had vision.
Yeah.
It was clear. So I think for us today, we don't really pay attention to people if they don't have a lot of likes and a lot of followers and a lot of money. And I think that that is telling of the heart of the country, is that we actually don't want leadership. We want what those people have.
Wow.
That creates another dynamic. You know, we're comparing ourselves amongst ourselves perpetually, and we're thinking, okay, this person has the things that I want. We think this subconsciously. I'll follow them, or they make me feel a certain way, so I'll follow them. But it's not actually based in logic, and it's not based on a futurist perspective. You know, pretty much everything for me. I'm over 30 now, so everything in my view is thinking about the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Where am I going to be, and where am I taking people? What of this? My grandparents are in their upper 80s, almost 90 now, and they're really concerned about not just them, but for us. And the conversations that we're having are, you know, we've never seen anything like this, you know, in all the things that we endured, you know, living in the South, rural South in the 30s and 40s. You know, they're saying they've never seen anything like this. And so I think that Americans need to brace themselves for the future. And because we've not seen war in a long time, we've never seen blatant race wars in this country, not in our generation. I think that this is new for a lot of people. And the moral fiber and the intellectual capability, and I won't say capability, but the intellectual prowess and space that's taken up in the minds of the people, it's not where it should be. And there's nothing worse than messing with ignorant people and challenge where they don't have a strategy on how to respond to it. And that's really plain talk, but that's how I feel about it. I think we, you know.
So we need both. Yeah, I agree with you, bro. Like from what you've shared, like we need to have the movement, but also the personalities that bring the change together, or that even bring what the practical steps that we need to do together, right?
And personalities have to interact. There's a conversation that happened in the 60s where Dr. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference board, Ralph Abernathy and Andrew Young and all of those guys, they came and met with President Kennedy, and they were asking him to pass this act. And he said, Martin, I love what you're doing, and I really appreciate the effort, but I need you to make me do what you're asking me to do. And it was after the conversation that they organized the March on Washington, where the I Have a Dream speech was given and all of that. So you have to have someone in that position to have that interaction. And even more so, when you have a fool running the country, you have to have a personality that can speak directly to power. You had to have a Moses to do with Pharaoh.
Yeah.
You don't have it. You don't have it.
Oh man, you have to have a Moses to speak to a Pharaoh. That's it right there. That's a word, bro. And another question I have for you, bro, like COVID-19 has definitely changed the world, changed everything that's going on, maybe even helped spearhead it, like the Black Lives Matter movement. What are some things that you are learning during COVID-19? What are some trends in your own life? And it could be something you've seen in the news. What are some things you're learning during this time?
Man, I'm learning how fragile I am. I'm learning just how the human condition can be affected by something that we can't see. I'm learning patience. I'm learning temperance. I'm learning how to manage myself and how to manage my time. I'm learning the things that I need: food, water, sun, exercise. You know, it is an all-around challenge to understand self at a whole nother level. We've lost friends and family and people to this disease, which is horrible. I am so thankful that in my immediate family, we haven't lost anyone. But it is just a devastating thing now. 145,000 people have died due to COVID-19 in our countries around the world, and it's just unbelievable that this is happening.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, man. And for me, I'm just learning just how to be comfortable with the unknown because there's so much uncertainty right now. Whether you're talking about, I talk to my sister all the time about what the future of work is, and like also what the future, people are asking, what's the future of the church? What's the future? There's so many things that people are trying to figure out. And I'm just in a place where I'm trying to get comfortable being like I don't have all the answers. I just have to take it day by day, step by step, and see what happens, and just do what I can, be as best prepared as I can for the future, but not being so timid and so fearful about the unknown that I can't even live life fully, which is what's going on in so many ways. So. Thanks for sharing, bro. And you mentioned about the Black Legacy Coalition, but what are some ways we can support that? Because one of the things that I love bringing people on here is not just them sharing about the topic at hand, but also how people can support what they're doing.
man, time, talent, and resources.
Okay.
We are gathering individuals from 20 sectors globally. So anyone can join and be a part. At this point, we're all meeting virtually, so that has become the norm. But we have what we call sector commissions, which are focused on areas like economic development, health, agriculture, faith, all kinds of things. Any place where African American culture intersects, we have someone interacting with that data. So whether it's prison reform, whether that's going to be gun policy reform, we want your voice included in those discussions and helping us to draft recommendations for the legislation. So to get any more information about the coalition, just visit TheBlack.co, the Black Co. That will allow you to learn more about what we're doing and to sign up to be involved in one of our informational sessions that we'll be doing. One of those, I believe, August the 15th is the next one. And we would love to have anybody that's involved. You can inbox me as well, and we'd be happy to give you that information.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, bro. I'm going to have all the links so that we can, check all, that information out and like support the way that you've suggested. Before I let you go, I always like, people to learn more about the guest and what is an interesting fact that people don't know about you.
Oh, wow. I sink when I swim.
You sink when you swim.
And for that reason alone, I don't swim very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
My sister swims like a fish. But I mean, they would put me in lessons and I would just be like, why is this not working?
Yeah.
She said, he's dense in his waist. And so it's a little more challenging for him to float. I was like, see, but yeah, I get Amistad flashbacks. I can't.
Oh, no. No, thanks for sharing. Huh?
I swam. I did that, swim from one end of the pool to the other. I did that so fast. I was trying to get up out that water.
Yeah, there's something about the water. Like I'm someone who likes looking at the water. I can go to the beach, maybe dip my toes, but to let me swim like a little bit. I'm like, nah, that's not for me, man. That's not for me. But another thing that's fun that I think is interesting about you is you can sing, bro. I've seen you sing over the years, bro. You can sing, not just sing, sing.
Well, I would say I have the ability to sing, but I wouldn't put in the category of those that sang, especially from Detroit. Like, nah. But I'm actually working on something in that department. So
okay, let's go. I'm excited. Well, Dex, bro, thanks for coming on and just sharing your heart, and especially during this time of just bringing clarity to these topics, because there's so many people who are just trying to navigate, especially so many Black people, Black Christians like myself, and who have questions and how do I process this, or what perspective, what lens should I look on seeing racism in the church and dealing with that, and just even the state of our country. And just also, how can we be an activist in the grassroots level where we're at? Like, how can we support? And I just want to say thank you both for just sharing your knowledge, sharing these tips, because I know it's going to help not just me, but a lot of people who are going to be watching. So appreciate you, bro. And man, have a great week, man. And we'll talk to you soon.
Raw Talks. Let's go.
Let's go.